So radiation, the word radiation basically is nothing but energy which is propagated in free space. This includes electromagnetic radiation in the form of, which is basically the wave form of radiation, and the particulate radiation or the particulate form of radiation. Basically, in physics, all of us learned that all matter in the world exists in two forms, in wave form as well as in particulate form. So accordingly, the radiation also exists in two forms, as an electromagnetic wave form and the particulate form, which is the particulate radiation. The sources from which this radiation emanate could be natural sources, wherein they could be external as well as internal, or they could be man-made sources. And man-made sources are predominantly coming under the medical sources of radiation exposure and the industrial source of radiation exposure. But if you look at this pie diagram, if you see 85% of the radiation to which we are exposed are basically from natural causes, and less than 15% are man-made. So this basically implies that whether we want it or not, most of us will be getting exposed to radiation in our day-to-day activities. So what are these sources of radiation to which we are getting exposed? The natural source of radiation. Basically, high up in the atmosphere, the sun and the other stars have a lot of charged particles within them which are interacting with the Earth's magnetic field continuously. This in turn releases radiation in the form of a cosmic shower. The ozone layer, which is present in the upper part of the atmosphere, basically protects the Earth from coming into contact with this cosmic radiation, which is basically ionizing radiation and is quite harmful. As we ascend above into the atmosphere at the higher levels, the radiation exposure increases. Say, for example, you are doing a transatlantic flight regularly. Definitely there is a higher risk of you getting exposed to radiation. The other natural source of radiation is a terrestrial radiation. There are certain parts of the Earth where basically in the soil there is a high level of radioactive material, and the people in and around these areas are constantly getting exposed to a higher level of radiation. In India, if you see these areas in black, basically South India in the form of areas near Trivandrum, as well as certain areas in Tamil Nadu, basically have higher levels of radioactivity in the Earth's crust. So basically the people there will also be getting exposed to higher background levels of radiation. But there have been studies which have shown that exposure to higher levels of background radiation need not necessarily lead to increased incidence of cancer. There were studies conducted in India as well as studies conducted in China which clearly showed that the high background rate of exposure to radiation does not lead to any increased risk of cancer or mortality of cancer, and there is no statistical basis behind this here. Coming to internal source of radiation, we are exposed to radiation through the inhalational route as well as through the ingestional route. By inhaling radioactive gases produced by decay of radioactive material in the Earth's crust, mainly radon, which is a byproduct of decay of radium, and thoron, which comes from thorium, we are also getting exposed to radiation in the form of the inhalational route. The diet we take, because some of this food may be grown on soil which is rich in radioactive elements, we are ingesting, some food as well as water which is taken deep down from below the earth might also be having radioactive content in it, which we will not be in a position to avoid consuming. So this basic diagram here shows us the amount of radioactive content in a normal diet content which would be taking daily. Red meat will be containing about 56 becquerel per 500 grams of radioactivity, and so does the normal vegetables and the fruits which we would be consuming in our diet. Apart from this, the man-made source of radiation about which there is a lot of emphasis and focus, this includes medical source of radiation in the form of X-rays, mammograms, dental X-rays, CT scans, PET CT scans, and nuclear medicine procedures, of which the highest radiation probably comes from the whole body PET. So that is why there are strong indications for using PET scan, and they are not repeated quite frequently, and there is a fixed interval between two PET CTs. On the other hand, there are certain other industrial causes of exposure to radiation where certain radioactive elements might be used. For example, people working in the nuclear reactors will be getting exposed to higher level of radiation than the normal public. But if you take, on an average, the natural sources of radiation cause more radiation exposure than the man-made causes of radiation.